Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline Comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet, and welcome to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello.
And David Rios.
Hello there.
And tonight we're going to be talking about drawing Monster Anatomy. So after a couple episodes of talking about writing and development, we're going to be relying on our artists pretty heavily tonight. But before we get into all that, let's figure out what we have been doing this last week to keep inspired. So we already talked about it a little bit before we get live. But Jose, this last week, what have you been reading, watching, playing, or otherwise?
Playing. Like I said, I usually stick with playing Ark. I've been playing some PUBG, zombies with some friends. So yeah, mostly Ark and reading. I've been just catching up on some of the random things. I like to read over and over again my DC Who's Who. I kind of just started finding some of my trade paperbacks that are in my garage. So
nice.
Not a whole lot, just really finding some stuff that I've had stored away and didn't realize it was still there.
Yeah. I feel like it seems dry, from the outset, but the encyclopedia or who's books for Marvel or DC, your guide books, I find that those are the easiest to just lose a unfortunate amount of hours in just unexpectedly.
Well, when I grew up, when I started getting back into comics, I kind of wanted, I read this DC book about this character. Well, I want to know more about him. And I realized I found out that the DC Who's Who is I'll just start collecting those so I can read up on particular characters. So there's a lot of storylines I don't know, but if you ask me about a character like Silver Age character and whatnot, I pretty much I would say that I know a good portion of them. Some characters when they decide, oh, we're gonna bring back this old character. Oh, I remember that guy. Like that guy can do this and this. Like his background is this.
Nice. Okay, David, what about yourself?
I haven't really read that much. Actually, I haven't really had much time to read a lot of the Krakoa stuff. I think I read 2 or 1.5 issues maybe of the Wolverine,
Okay.
which was kind of fun because it was the Wolverine title where Deadpool was with him.
Yeah.
Sorry. And so that, and I did read one of the distillery books, The Missionary, which I found pretty interesting. It's basically one of those, sell your soul. Your life kind of sucks, and you want a way out, and you kind of make a deal with a demon type thing. So interesting.
As you do. Yeah.
As you do. But no, that's pretty much all I've been able to read. And a little bit I've started watching, when I'm eating and stuff like that, the show Tracker with Josh Hartnett. Is Josh Hartnett? No, not Josh Hartnett. Guy who played Green Arrow on Smallville, and he's in This Is Us.
I do not remember their name.
I'm blanking. I don't know. But the tall blonde guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been kind of interesting. Like I said, I haven't, I haven't had a whole lot of time to do a lot of stuff. So, yeah, been working on demon stuff. So I need to try and get that all finished. So that's kind of my priority now. And no games.
That's right.
No games. I did want to mention, awesome stuff with the getting the goal net for Team Beetle and all that. So
You got very quiet there.
Sorry. Just congratulations on getting meeting the goal for Team Beetle.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
For the crowdfund.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Saw your post earlier today on Facebook. So,
yeah, I was pretty excited to see that.
Yeah. Very cool.
Already got 2 questions starting off. How much muscle is too much muscle? Obviously, comics can afford massive sizes, but just bodybuilders, you can limit movement. Your thoughts?
I would say if it were the 90s, there was no such thing as too much muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Like those. Those the Liefeld Captain America with the big heaving chest.
So like draw, like say you draw your deltoid, right? It's usually broken up into 3s. But if you ever like read any Incredible Hulk movie, there's like 15 like ridges for each one, for each arm. So I guess it would depend on how big a character or a monster that you're trying to draw.
Yeah.
I was looking on. It was a little bit earlier today. I was looking at Kevin West had a post of a fly monster that he did. That was pretty gross. Definitely carried across the thing that we're having today. It was awesome. He did some awesome work. So, shout out to him for continuing the the tradition of Halloween and monster
Right.
and stuff like that. So cool stuff.
Absolutely. And old dirty fatty asks, isn't the trick for drawing a monster anatomy to get one to pose nude for you?
I mean, again, in the 90s, that was real easy, but nowadays they want money, they want commissions, they want to be able to post it on their social media. It just becomes a whole hassle.
Absolutely. I just have to deal with the things PR manager and
Right? It's too much paperwork now. Now you just got to make it up.
yeah. Oh, say myself. Last week I have been playing a lot of Halo Infinite. I got back into doing the ranked multiplayer there, as well as playing MechWarrior 5 Clans. Really enjoying the story there. I did some of that on stream as well.
Nice.
Cool.
And then it put me down a rabbit hole. So my reading this last week has also been the BattleTech Universe guide that came out for the 40th anniversary of BattleTech. So reading through some of that, the condensed version of 400 years of history of a fictional universe. So
sounds like you and Roland can have some good
condensed
conversation.
Yeah.
Even the condensed version is still a big version.
Yeah. It's not a big book, but it reads very well, and I love the visuals in it.
Nice.
Watching, Ben, I started watching Psychopaths. I haven't got a chance to watch that yet, so I just started watching that.
Is it a show?
Yeah, it's a show. It's an anime, and it's in a fictional near future where there is a system called Psychopaths, which is set up and made mandatory. And essentially what it is it rates people's mental health based on their likelihood to commit a crime. So it's kind of like Minority Report in that if people are latent criminals, then they get assigned a person to essentially bring them in and force them to go through mandated therapy. But imagine a more violent version of Minority Report. It's kind of that same vibe as Blade Runner or
Right.
Total Recall style cyberpunk, but mixed with some interesting interpersonal dynamics that make that really kind of round out the story. So I'm enjoying it quite a bit.
Very nice.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Scrap tonight's topic. Where it says on the fly, make a new monster. Exactly. Remember a tutorial from Wizard Magazine? Yeah, Wizard Magazine has weird stuff.
So funny enough, I have a bunch of really older Wizard magazines that I have in a chest. I think it's in my closet that I kept specifically because it had the Roots and Babes like Bart Sears used to do in there. Like I started collecting it for all the other articles, but specifically I wanted to keep track of those and all those. I know they have had guest people in there. They had Joe Kubert do stuff like a series. I think for was it 3 months? He had 3 different tutorials in there for stuff. Adam Hughes has done stuff in there. Those are definitely if you have them, keep them and use them if you for any kind of like I said for tutorials on how to do. I think Adam Hughes versions were how to draw beautiful women or sexy women and stuff like that. So
yeah,
those are worth keeping.
Okay. Well, I guess to get into it, we're to kind of ask questions related to something I feel like is a good jumping off point for comics when it comes to monster design. We were kind of mentioned this in the pre-show, is that part of the conversation will probably be on what sort of areas do you, when you're designing a monster, do you exaggerate or do you make larger than life? Comics, of course, are known for having big muscle-clad creatures and people.
Right.
And certainly, I feel like there is value in having big, jacked as all heck monsters. I think of like Mr. T from Resident Evil.
Yeah.
But personally, I'm a fan of lithe, shadowy, kind of strange things. But I guess as if you were to tasked with designing a monster from scratch, what sort of considerations would you make when you're thinking about, like, do I make this big and muscly? Do I make this skinny? Kind of, where do you find the how to sell the personality of the monster into the design?
I think it would depend on like what kind of monster. Like, I know that sounds weird. What kind of monster is it gonna make? But is it a fast monster? Is it in the comic or in the movie, or is it a monster like that moves very quickly, or is it one that just like brutes its way through stuff? You know what I mean? I think that determines like how the basics for the monsters. Like, so if it's like a fast moving monster, then you know you want it to be a little more light. You're gonna, yeah, you may show like muscle tone on it and whatnot, but it's going to be like more tone, you know, more sleek in regards to like body structure, right? Or if you just have this big towering brooding monster, then you get with Nemesis, you know what I mean, from Resident Evil. You know, that's just like a big, you know, monster and it stomps after you, right? But yeah, I think it would determine the characteristics of, you know, of like what the monster can do. I feel help to determine what the monster's going to look like.
Yeah,
makes sense.
So when you're after you kind of settle on that path and you've said like, okay, this guy's going to be big and burly, he's going to be small and fast. What are going to be some considerations? Like if it's going to be like a horror style comic, right? If it's not just like a straight up a superhero monster, but if it's going to be a horror monster, do you make any sort of specific changes then to those designs to have elements of horror in them? Like, I always think of Shadow King as an example of the fact that he's always drawn as being outstretched and sketchy and is kind of doing a lot of like things that make him look as inhuman as possible.
Right.
Yeah. Is there something similar, I guess, when you're doing something like it's big and bulky? Do you find ways to make the pectorals extra spooky?
Hairy. You make everything hairy, right?
There you go.
Yeah. That I think the what's mainly used for most are, like, in my opinion anyway, are if you want a monster to, you know, to be quick or whatever, you make them skinny. You give them scales or something like that, or something like a body like, let's say, a salamander. You know what I mean? Or a lizard. And if you like, say you want like a big burly, like a big beefy monster, like everything I could think of, like even if like they augment like how he looks, so like he's still gonna have like big forearms, big, like I feel big furry arms, or like I don't know, flesh coming off from the spikes, you know what I mean, scales, horns and whatnot. Like those are the things, like when you're a kid, you know, you think of the monster under your bed or the monster in your closet, you know what I mean? You're gonna either way, be it fast or brute, you're gonna envision them with like a big mouth, right? Like big gnarly teeth, you know, coming to bite you. I think that's what the favorite things to do, like favorite things to see, like growing up, like those, not necessarily see, but like that is what you envision as a kid. At least that's what I envisioned as a kid. You know what I mean? A monster under my bed was not, you know, Pennywise the clown, even though that was scary as all get out, but it was like a toothy, you know, monster like coming out of it, like big long fingers and claws and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, another question in there. What do you think is the most underrated monster design? Underrated monster design.
Critters. Critters.
Okay. Yeah.
Like the logic, like this. I mean, yeah, they're creepy little, you know, balls of like Munchie and whatnot, but I mean, they could have done more. Like people, like I don't know. I think was it like 5 movies in that franchise, and like I really think that That's just a idea. And then the idea that they can all roll in together to a ball and just like eat people as they roll down a hill.
Yeah.
Like that's an underrated like monster design to me. Like just the little furry everything.
One thing that I think that's kind of underrated, and it's kind of weird, you kind of have to work with me here on this, is because it wasn't specifically in your face monster, like terrorize a monster, but one of the things I'm thinking of that had a great design that really put across kind of the evil thing was, if you think of Dark Crystal, the Skeksis.
The Skeksis.
They had a great design, and they were scary, but they weren't your typical, like critters or, things like that. So I personally loved the design that they had, because there was a lot of, scary, a lot of brokenness, a lot of kind of age thing that I really kind of dug those designs for those characters that they had. So
they were roughly based off of Vultures, weren't they?
Yeah.
And that just, nobody ever looks, I call them road chickens here in Florida, but because they're all over the place. But yeah, it's not like you're sitting there and stare at a vulture. So like the idea of like it going, you know what I mean? Like just like, oh.
Yeah, and then, but they kind of matched the thing in, as grotesque as they were, a lot of their attitudes and the things that they did in there, like, capturing, and draining the life force and all that stuff. For me, that's a monster, right? That classifies a monster to me. So,
no, I think I have to go like kind of like the opposite path. I'm going to pull on D&D here a little bit, but I think because of something that happened in a game recently, I think sort of tree or vine based monsters like don't really get a whole lot of play outside of like Entre 2 and musical comedies, right? But the idea of having just bramble or vines whip out and like grab at someone's ankles in the middle of the woods at like in the middle of the night is something that could be truly terrifying, and it's only like used in a few different stories.
I can see that, yeah. That's a tough one. That one plays off like in regards to like movies or not. That would definitely play off of like, manipulating the shadows and moving around and like, so you're not really seeing like this big tree ink monster thing coming after you. Just all of a sudden these vines are grabbing a hold of you.
Yeah. Like, I think to add some visual interest to it, you could definitely do something like underground kind of grave mind style, just underground with this giant mega plant, but that doesn't get revealed until the very end.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, along those lines, I don't know if you've followed anything with the High Republic stuff, but one of the monsters in there are the Drengir, which are basically carnivorous plants.
Okay.
So, you get a lot of they do in the, at least in the entry in the books, you get a lot of that thing where you know that they're coming. There's a lot of growth and things, vines and stuff like that, and then you've got these monsters and it's been a while. I kind of shifted off them, but I believe they're also kind of telepathic and kind of they can, to a degree, take over, people and stuff like that. So they're pretty, fairly horrifying plant creatures. So,
dang. Yeah. Okay, I haven't really been following High Republic too much, but there's been certain ideas in it that I'm interested in checking out, so I'll bet you'll have to jump into it.
Let me see if I can find.
What's got your cover? What are you talking about?
Yeah. I think something that we kind of interesting to talk about. We talking about some of the psychology of monsters and things that kind of make them scary or things we find terrifying about them. But going into the practical of it all, obviously you would not draw for the most part, with different exceptions based on what type of monster it is, right? You're not going to draw a monster exactly like you would draw a human or a superhero or anything else.
At least I hope not.
Right. Even vampires and like a lot of root creations, you end up getting like different angles and or different styles of ears, or their mouth is done in a different way. Some of the stuff is going to have a reference out there, but some of it is going to be like Rory said earlier, drawing from scratch. So when you're kind of figuring out those shapes to like start your building, like creating the design, what does that process look like? Are you just like in your mind's eye being like, again, it looks like this, so I'm going to go like square here, circle, 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 and then like slowly refine it over time? Or do you find like a reference of something that's like a close approximation and then modify from there?
I like yes, a little bit of both, right? So it's drawing, a shape, like gesturing it out to see what shape you feel looks best. Be like a big creature or like skinny creature and whatnot. Like I said, but like then you start hammering out the details and whatnot. Like I like to pull in that regard when it comes down to that point. I like to pull references. Like I want this to have like big long hands and long fingers, right? So I'm gonna pull references up like and so lizards, when like if you ever look at their like their arms and stuff like that, there's definitely like wrinkles like in the scale of their skin and stuff like that, like folds, which play pretty good to having like working with shadows and lines. But I wanted to reference like the big long. They would have like two very long fingers and whatnot. And the other ones are kind of a little smaller. Like stuff like that. Like I'm gonna pull reference for that. If it's a creature that's gonna have like horns, I'm gonna find something in nature that roughly looks like what I want, so I can at least use that as my base. However, I tweak it out after that is how I work it out. But like at least that tells me like this is the curve of like these particular horns that I want. Like the ram's horn, kind of curves around, or actually curves around this way and back out. But if you look at them, they're almost spiral, right? So they have like a spiral effect when they come around, and so I'll pull that to make sure like, hey, that's the effect I want. I want it to look like these big honking like horns wrapped around its head. But for a monster for its mouth, you don't necessarily want like a human mouth with like teeth and whatnot. Like do something different. Throw like the big pincers for like a spider. You know what I mean? Make it like a spider, or give it a bunch of eyes, across its forehead and stuff like that. Like just different options. You know what I mean? But like I definitely like the more humanoid form when it comes to monsters.
Okay.
But yeah, I definitely use references. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. I know I was watching, it might have been Babs Tar work on a design on Twitch and but they did something where they, in order to get the effect they wanted, they pulled like the reference of like a human, a cow, and like a spider head, and it's kind of like grabbed bits from each little thing that they wanted to eventually like make it all work together. But
we did that for school. Like we did a project like that, and I don't think it was digital production. I think it was method material. But we did a project where we had to pick, I think it was like 2 or 3 different creatures and like build them together. And like one of them I did like a praying mantis and something else. Like I don't remember. But the other one I did a sea pig, which was just like these blobs of like little tentacle thingies hopping off. A sea pig mixed with a jellyfish and I think something else. You know what I mean? So it was like the sea pig floating and it had teeth in the front. And it had like these like jellyfish tentacles hanging down.
Yeah. So, Rory in chat talking about writing a monster, like writing the design for it, writing the high points and big details, and then restart and let the small details form themselves. Yeah, I find that in a lot of cases when you're creating something like a new idea or something that doesn't exist in reality, you kind of have to do the either visually or narratively when you're creating it. You have to do your first take on it, realize the things you don't like about it, and then do it again.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess we'll fill in some space with coloring here, some color talk as well. We'll give David a chance to shine. So obviously, monster anatomy is not going to be entirely reflective of human anatomy, and sometimes the writer or the creator may not necessarily give you as much detail about like the actual like tones or colors of the monster itself, or what it's going to, or the small details of what it looks like. So when you're working on your color palette and figure out how you want to color this thing, where's kind of your starting point, and how do you decide to sort of assign your palette to the anatomy?
Well, it all depends on the content. Are you looking at something that's healthy? Is it something that, it's a living being that turns? Are you looking at something that's something that's been dead a long time? So if you're looking at your, maybe your classic monsters, your vampires, your Frankenstein's monsters, stuff like that, then you're gonna go heavy with a lot of dead skin colors, washed out, muted, stuff like that. Whenever you're dealing with something that, maybe they're alive, and turn into kind of something more, then you may turn around and do something that's more on, like a pinkish and stuff like that. Let me open something up here, and one second. While I'm bringing this up. So if I share this Photoshop thing here, let me present screen window Photoshop. When you can see that.
There you go.
So this is this is a page in the last book where you had somebody that turned. So I went through and I decided to go ahead and start using, pinkish tones and stuff like that to give him a monstrous. So he's still alive. It's just he's kind of mutated.
Yeah.
So that's an example. And whenever I go through, and one sec here, I get to a point where where I push that even farther, and I start, when you start degrading, I really start to pull the line art and just kind of push things more into like a sloppy mess to kind of push that through, and kind of mute the colors down and stuff like that. Still keeping that pinkish thing, but depending on how you go, it's what do you use as the content to start there? Is it something, like I said, is it something dead that you want to wash out and do all that, or do you want to go and deal with something? Think about it, kind of your Resident Evil. You think about some of those as characters that are get infected with a T virus, and they start to change, unless they're ones that kind of go more towards the dead thing. They start to get washed out. Their skin tones start to gray out and stuff like that. Yeah. Where you turn around at the same point and you may have some of the main villains who work the T virus to their effects, so they look a lot more lively and a lot more colorful in their in the ways that they look. So again, it's all content, and the basis of the character. I mean, if you are, say you're developing a nemesis for somebody like Swamp Thing or something like that, you're probably going to start to tend to pull from the same type of area. So a lot of that that the green foresty type stuff will probably get drawn in, and you can kind of play around with that color palette. One of the things I thought was interesting in the MCU and in the second Hulk was how they modified when they did the Abomination. They kind of put that translucent skin color, with some greenish hues into it, but they kind of incorporated that, so you had something that's contrasted well with the Hulk character and all that. So again, it's all depending on who you're dealing with and what the situation is.
Yeah.
So,
definitely. And Info again kind of points to the same concept there, is that if you swap the palettes on the Cloverfield monster and the Xenomorph, they wouldn't look nearly as well as they do.
Yeah, the Xenomorph, like I said before, and one of the other things, when I was playing around doing the brood off of that, one of the things that besides Geiger's designs of the actual character, but some of the things that helped make that character terrifying was the coloring and the translucent black, that made it even less feel less tangible and more frightening. It's by incorporating a lot of those those darker colors with the where you could see translucency in the skin and all that. So definitely,
yeah. It's kind of interesting. A new anime that started up Dame to Dame, but is very absurd, and deals with ghosts and aliens, and it's kind of so you get your wide share of monsters from episode to episode. And what I thought was a really interesting use of the visual storytelling of it all was in the second episode, the two main characters end up fighting an alien that essentially is drawn like a space sumo wrestler. So it's this big round body thing with like the big tied knot around its back and all that stuff. But with enough visual differences in there to make it unsettling, like the way the expression is drawn, because it's big square face with the expression being completely straight lines. And then perpendicular with like lines across the entire like body and skin. So that already adds like a level of uneasiness to it, just like the uncanny valley of a face drawn incorrectly. Um, And then it also the monster itself turns the entire scene into a grayscale monochromatic, and so you might get some light colors on the characters, but the monster itself is done in a way that almost like it's creating its own separate layer of coloring existing within the space.
So is it some kind of, for lack of a better term, like a color? It exudes a color-sucking void around it, where it
Kind of, yeah. Let me see if I can. It's gonna be a very strange Google search here. Dan Sumo Alien. Oh, here we go. Open image in new tab. So I have the manga here, but I don't have the anime panel. But it is still like so in the anime it is colored the same way that it is just white, blacks, and like shadow lines. Whereas the rest of the anime is like around it is colored like you would normally color an anime.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of bright colors, saturated colors around him.
Yeah, and then they start getting sucked out as the scene goes on until it is completely like grayscale essentially. But
Tim, that's some weird stuff.
yeah, but yeah, the way that face is designed too is. I don't like how I got the Spanish translation, but yeah, it came to mind thinking about recent like monster designs that stuck with me, because when I was watching that, it's kind of a moment of I've never seen anything like that in any sort of story ever.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that, Tim. That's freaky.
Yes, it is. Well, you think about some of the other designs. One design that stands out that's perfect, I think is really perfect design for the character, is the Rancor in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
That character is designed for exactly what it is designed to be. It's designed to eat things. So You've got the big head with the big sharp teeth. You've got the big arms with, like you had talked about earlier, Jose, big, huge fingers, claws, and that design to me just kind of is, like I said, it is perfect for the design, for the purpose it was created for. To be a thing that was going to eat you and was built to eat you.
Right. There was no misunderstanding what it was there for.
Exactly. Yeah. We won't talk about the Clone Wars and how they had baby ones and all this stuff.
Well, I will tell you,
but
Star Wars Legacy, I think it was Star Wars Legacy. Jan Dursuma did Rancor with wings.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. That was interesting.
Nice.
But yeah, like the idea of like everyone knows what the rank. Like, I mean, from what, the 70s and whatnot. Like, you not quite the 70s, into like the 80s or whatever, early 80s when
83 was when that one was released.
Yeah, so like from the 80s, you get this like notion of this is what a Rancor looks like. This is, even in the wild, they're going to look like this, and then she comes in and just does one with the wings. And what's more terrifying? Rancor is already terrifying, and now it's going to like freaking fly over your head and descend upon you. No thanks. That's terror. That's nightmare fuel.
But then you've also got things not only with the mouth and the teeth and all that stuff. Is the other thing that kind of sticks with me is the deep black eyes.
Yeah.
It's just, it just looks dap. So,
Well, kind of similar redesign note, but almost like an inversion of your highlights and lowlights. The Balrog in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Going to the movies, they gave it wings as a redesign. Because then originally in the books it did not.
Someone else. I didn't know about that. Like,
yeah, it's kind of
few
a
other
choice.
people I didn't know about.
Yeah, but I feel like even like I feel like when you're like with monsters, it's this weird thing where because they don't exist in real life, you don't feel like there should be a necessary standard for them to constantly be like updated or refreshed.
Right.
But I think because of cultural exposure to things, to like keep up a level of shock or to make it apropos to fears of the time, you do have to be changing the designs and how things are reflected in monsters. Appendages or body or however they're built. But kind of like the same thing where the Rancor's eyes were it's kind of black and deep set, and its mouth was this wide gaping thing. It seemed like it was just this like maw of a creature just like hungry, ready to eat you. Right? Is this like hungry maw? The Balrog was like inverted, so the body was the low lights and it was all black, whereas the eyes and the mouth had these big bright flames, and it was more so just like outwardly angry and aggressive.
Yeah, but a lot of things with the design that was great was the fire basically had consumed the Balrog.
Mm-hmm.
So you had a fiery consumed thing that that existed, and if you go in the context of the movies, it's very small, and it's kind of they kind of play it off of you're in my space type thing. I'm defending my space. But if I've been kind of doing a lot of reading on the other function where they were created to be an army, and but basically they got to the point where they're still kind of hiding and all that. So they're just kind of at this point, a case of come in and wipe the board and then go back and do their thing. They're not, hell bent on conquering and stuff like that. So
yeah, kind of a side note there, but we've talked about before. Dave and I both watched through what's out so far over Rings of Power, but yeah, the Balrogs were kind of fought into near extinction in the first stage during the fall of Malcor, and were forced into hiding in the deep dark places.
Mm-hmm.
One of the heroes that did that was Glorfindel, who in the Second Age at the War of Wrath is supposed to come back as a messenger from the Valar, and we haven't got him yet. And I want I need Glorfindel on the screen. Yeah, there's kind of like these things where that, and then the xenomorph redesign coming off of Prometheus, you can do a lot in the visual storytelling of a monster to kind of continue on like part of its backstory, and things like with Alien, where that backstory was entirely created by Geiger, essentially. Like originally in the movies, it's supposed to be like monster eat people, but he ends up creating a design that reflects more of like a technology infused bioweapon of some sort, and like ends up getting used and updated in Prometheus, and they redesigned the body kind of from that point on to reflect that, and you can see kind of the There's a whole infographic you can find online of like the different ways the heads have been shaped in the movies to reflect like the understanding of xenomorphs. That's same with Balrog. So I think it's really interesting how it's something else I encourage writers to do is that at some point you have to like let go on some elements and let your artists also help contribute to the story in their own way, because the artist probably has an understanding of the visual they made and where they got their ideas for things, and usually those end up working out really well if you just find a way to integrate them into your own story. There's some ways where you have to like, no, like that's silly, I can't do that. But a lot of times if you like want to fully collaborate on getting the most out of your comic, you can pick and borrow elements from your artist's understanding of the monster, even if they didn't necessarily read like the entire background brief.
Wait, we're supposed to read the background brief?
Exactly.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Sort of.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you're like, it's kind of very into like the psychology of writing, I guess. But like, if I gave you like an entire background brief and like, and I laid out like, I just essentially like wrote out directions for the visual description of a monster, then for the artist, it kind of, I'm not giving you a whole lot of wiggle room. And yeah, it's usually great to give you some guide rails so you're not, it's kind of pissing in the wind, but. It is a collaboration at the end of the day, so allowing the artist to and the colorist to kind of do what they want to do with it within the confines of the story, and then you find a way to reintegrate those elements back into the story. You can make monsters that are greater than some of their parts.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think a lot of the artists, they want to play around and they want to create and put their own spin on it. There are some that just want to, at the end of the day, crank out as much as they can and make as much money. But generally, most of the artists out there just want to, they want to make something fun. And, particularly in this industry, you want to try and have as much fun as you can. And be as creative as you can. So having that and allowing the artists to, kind of go wild on, as much as you can, that definitely helps put out a better design, a better product. So.
Well, it allows artists to become invested in the work that they're working on, right? Instead of just, I'm just grinding out a paycheck. Like I help create these characters. I help make these monsters. I help bring them to life, design wise. Like I would imagine, at least from my point of view, that's enjoyable. That's investing into the project that you're working on.
No. Yep. Absolutely. Jose, I believe you had done some work to get your screen shareable. Did you want to share your screen with us and talk about what you've been doing and what we're going on?
So this is what I've been doing while we're talking about monsters and whatnot. We mentioned several different ideas and whatnot. Let's see if I can get it to present correctly. Hopefully I didn't break the internet.
No, we got it. No, we're there.
So I just kind of roughed out like a little monster, like more like a kind of like a bee head with like a little mouth and whatnot, and some hands like a mole cricket, and some I don't know, bendy legs. But I also put the way I designed it up, he like his other arms are kind of tucked into his side. You know what I mean? Under this area right here.
You make some really cool whip antenna on the top of it, like these kind of.
We'll get those in there. I'll clean it up. But yeah, that's just we're talking about. Like I said, talking about monsters and using various elements, and I think that monsters that have like an arm or like a carapace are fun to draw. Like just the idea that If you look at what's his name, Anol from X-Men, right? He's like this green dude, and every time he gets beat up or has something ripped off, it grows back, but it grows back in a monstrous form. So he's got this like one arm with like this like armor across it, like it has spikes and stuff like that, and like to me, like that's just like bugs and whatnot. And he's got like a no hair. He's just got like a helmet scale thing. So yeah, just taking elements of different bugs and stuff like that. I was gonna do a lizard thing, but I decided just to go with bugs because let's be honest, bugs are fair or fun.
Yeah, and bugs are a constant kind of fodder for horror monsters as well.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, even from back in the day, you had the Fly. You know what I mean? A man who does experiments and whatnot, and switches features and whatnot, switches like parts of his anatomy with a fly. I know there's a more modern day version with the old black and white one is my favorite. And then flies got a little bit of hair on them, so you gotta make it add a little bit of fuzz there, a little bit of those spikes and stuff. So I got spikes going on over here on his shoulder.
Nice.
And then you just play with it. You know what I mean? Just like you just, if something doesn't work, erase it and start again. But
Yeah.
just play with the design because you want it to have a point. In my opinion, you want something to have a point. If something's going to look like, I want it to look like a bug. Bugs have more than one, more than two legs, more than whatnot. So where are you going to put those? Like I said, that's still has them in the design of the monster. Just like, what was it? Jeepers Creepers, right? Like that dude looked like a dude with a trench coat and a hat on. But you find out if you watch, I don't think necessarily the first movie, but like if you watch like the second or third or whatever, you find out he's a bug. Like he's got big honking wings. Like that trench coat, it's wings. Like his wings are tucked in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I really like the kind of the way that the like fingers and forearms are proportioned. Can you kind of walk through some of the choices they're made in doing those?
The reason I did that is taking, like I said, taking the arm of like a mole cricket into consideration for his arms. It's got, if you ever see a mole cricket, it's got like a big honking like arm, and it's got like claws like this, right? That are facing out. So like the thumb is up here, and in regards to like the way we look at it, right? And it's used to push stuff away. But I like the idea of the big forearm and like the skinnier, like smaller arm when it, to our bicep area, right? But I did it bigger because if you look to me, if you take like say, was it the White Ape from John Carter? You know what I mean? It's more menacing if the creature can like sit there and haunch forward. You know what I mean? Like use its like has big arms to like kind of give it like that like hunched over look, and that's kind of the impression I was going for. I wanted him to have bigger arms, so like if he were to like kind of assume like a crouching prowling pose, like the arms will stick out like that. That's what I was going for.
Okay.
The legs, I did that. That reminds me of just any kind of animal leg like that can sprint like a gazelle. You know what I mean? The legs are bent a specific way and whatnot, or even a cheetah. Like if you draw animal legs, it's all the same joints we have in our feet and hands. They're just in different proportions for that animal, right? But I like the idea of like, yes, he can all crouch down, hands all in front, and then those legs are going to help him spring out at the particular whatever his prey is. And it's always cool to draw those back legs like that. I don't know.
Oh yeah. I mean, same concept that goes for like mech design, right? Is if you get a chance to do backward legs, you do the backwards legs.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it was the ATST in Star Wars, the little thing that was walking through the Endor that had
Mhm.
legs like that. It's just to me, I don't know, it just seems more menacing. I think we're as creators, as fans of like horror stuff, sci-fi stuff. It just because it's not how our legs bend, it definitely like comes off as looking like a little more menacing. You know, that's my impression. That's what I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do you have any other things you want to hit on or talk about as we come to the end of our hour here? I have run through my notes, but we still have some time to go. If anybody has any other thoughts or things you want to talk about, or questions about Jose's drawing, or if Jose, if you have anything you want to talk about as you work on it.
I think this thing might have to be in a story somewhere. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Does it need wings? I think are wings too much?
I'm thinking wings are might be a little too much.
Too much.
Because you got a lot of the detail there in the arms and all that, and if you're talking about expanding the wings and expanding the arms and all that, I think you're probably kind of packing it up much.
I think you might be right.
Yeah, I think if anything, you could probably get away with like the folded up on the back at wings. Something where like if there's a story element that could be used, but not necessarily visible all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Give it a ladybug.
Plus, I'm thinking on this one, by keeping that, by adding wings, with the fly and everything, you tend to leave it. It tends to go more towards being a fly.
Yeah.
Whereas without it, you're kind of leaving it more as its own kind of distinct monster.
Yeah.
And I'm also with I'm with Tim on this. One of the things that I really like is the big upper arm, because when I'm looking at that, I'm kind of seeing something like a big exoskeleton type, bone, almost bone type, hard protective shell that can be used in a defensive thing as well as as an offensive thing. For the fingers and all that stuff, my mind goes back to Transformers the movie and the Sharkticons, where they slash at each other.
Yeah.
And so having that, having a heavier, stronger arm and fist allows more swinging power and clutch for ripping things. And having the pointed fingers and long, lengthy pointed fingers, I think that plays well into that. I could see in a fight that it bringing its arms up to protect and then lash out and stuff like that.
I like that. I didn't think about defense, but that actually plays out really well.
Well, you think about a lot of the traits on bugs, on snakes. A lot of that is a lot of their design and a lot of things that they're known for. You think scorpions, stuff like that. Snakes, their venom is all. A lot of that stuff is for defense of themselves.
Right.
So having that, I think works very well. It's kind of nature is kind of deals in that that defensive mechanism, on its own. It develops over time. So, maybe I'm overemphasizing it.
No,
I don't know. Yeah.
But I'm definitely digging this. Is
Yeah.
the neck piece there? You're putting like a hair or
Yeah.
Okay, that fuzzy.
I may clean it up, but yeah, just enough to give it some texture, like to break up the the plating a little bit.
Mhm. The other thing looking at this is when I look at the legs, I think of not intentional and all this. One of the things that pops out to me is Darth Maul's legs when he was rebuilt.
Oh
as
yeah.
the Rogue.
Yeah,
Yes.
For this, it's like the three toes, the sharp cut that you have in the right at the pelvic area. Just
I can
that
see that.
that I don't necessarily say that's a good way to go with this, but that's what my head starts to see, um, that whole thing. And this design, thinking back in Darth Maul and the animated series, just makes me picture how this creature would run.
Right,
Those bigger strides, and kind of the bigger strides, the leaping,
right.
stuff
Well,
like
my
that.
idea for like specifically, because I like drawing legs like that anyway. But like I said, like Tim said, you're gonna do it for a mech warrior. Like, why would you not give it like the back for legs, right? But
Mhm.
you have to take into consideration, you know what I mean? What is it gonna look like if you filled the whole thing in black? Like, what's the silhouette gonna look like, right? And I wanted to do something that was gonna break it up and like you'll be able to recognize if you see the legs, if you see this whole thing blacked in and whatnot. Oh yeah, I know. Like Jose was drawn something like that. Like that might be what he was drawing. Like, you know what I mean, in regards to like using it in a comic book story.
Yeah, you picture, that, maybe you're in a dark area and you see movement and you're kind of wondering, is that your, protagonist or is it the antagonist? And having
Right.
that defined silhouette will tell you by hints exactly who it is rather than having to just throw it in there and detail draw it and all that. So
For some reason, you know what Batman looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would want people to know, like, when they see this monster and attacking whoever, I'd want them to know what it was. Oh yeah, that's the bad guy.
yep.
So, but yeah, play around with around with animal parts.
Yeah.
Like, that's the best thing I can say is like add them together, mix them together, create new monsters. Create like I'm pretty sure I feel anyway. That's what basically D&D did with their monsters. They just let's make this monster look like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? One of the monsters was a formine. It's like a giant ant. You know what I mean? But it
Mm-hmm.
has ant features, but still it's kind of humanoid in regards to like its upper torso and everything. So play
And
around.
this is why Tim and I kind of discussed pushing this off a week. We weren't sure if you were going to come in, so it was like definitely your input and stuff like this has definitely made it worth pushing it off a week to be sure that you could join us. So that's awesome.
I'm glad we did. I took this week trying to figure out how to stream my or screen share my iPad. I didn't know how to do it before.
Nice.
Like, this is gotta work. Like, I know Tommy knows how to do it, but I didn't ask. I think I asked Tommy like a while back, but like things happen and stuff like that. So like I could figure it out. I don't need Tommy. Just kidding, Tommy. We love you.
No.
He was on here. Is he still on? He might be.
Yeah, I'm doing pencils on a sketch cover for one of the books he has. Mississippi Macabre, I think that's the name of it. But I'm doing it. It'll be cool. I like it.
Nice.
I'll share it when I'm done.
Nice. Okay. Well, do we have any closing thoughts?
I
I
would
think
say
the last time I said, yeah, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
no. I would say have fun with it. You know,
Yeah.
here's perfect proof right now. You know, Jose, I'm pretty sure he's just having fun with this.
Yeah.
And you know, just play around, have fun. You know, like I know at this stage, you know, Jose is putting the you know, the inking touches on it, but like you said, and we said before, it's when you draw it, it's just pencil. It can be erased. You know, even in the ink stage, you know, you can go back and white out areas. Just don't be afraid to play around with it, and you know. And I know big thing that I struggle with is you know, when I play around with pencils, it's just I don't want to undo what I did, and of course it all looks really stiff because it kind of needs to be undone, you know, and blend more, you know, and play around with you know, being less rigid, and so just have fun.
Yeah, you gotta
do some stuff, cool stuff. Go ahead, Jose.
No, I'm just saying. I'm just agreeing with you about the having fun part. Just go with it. And if you have to throw a piece of paper away, throw a piece of paper away. You know what I mean? There's going to be a million pieces you throw on the ground for the, you know, one or two pieces that you really enjoy. But that's how you learn. You know what I mean? That's how you figure out, you know, what works for you, what works for the creature that you're trying to create. You know, then what works for the story. So, you know, just. Like I just started throwing together, like I started off with the eyes, like, you know what I mean, the bug looking eyes, and then just kind of went from there. And it's just like you see, you know, the brown digital pencil is all just roughing it in. You know what I mean? Is this gonna look cool? I don't know. Does one arm look longer than the other? Maybe. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like I'm enjoying it, and I do that. Like I'll run a piece, and I always ideally want to like start and finish one piece right out the gate and be done. But I have learned that is never, ever going to be my process.
Nice.
Like, so, you know, everyone wants to go straight from like 0 to like masterpiece, but scribble around. You know what I mean? It's fun.
There we go. I hope we can have more Jose's drawing on future streams and they have that figured out. Yeah, and if you're an audio listener, After Effects on iTunes or Spotify, and want to watch Jose draw live, head on over to YouTube or Twitch. Look up Silverline Comics, give us a follow, and you can join the conversation live Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Pacific time. We will return next week with our Vampire the Masquerade campaign continuation.
I'm so excited.
So, I'll make sure you guys get the Demi Plane link, and you're going to get back into your character sheets from last time. And double check with Roland to make sure he's good to go, but hopefully we should have a full crew for that. Make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday on 8 p.m. Eastern times on those respective days. We can check out those crews.
Don't forget to invite Cassisi.
Yes.
Yes.
She is an invite.
He was excited too.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you all for watching. Thank you, Angels, for subbing. I hope you all have a great evening. We'll see you next week. But until that time.
Make mine
Silverline.
Hey, I'm G-Rod. Make mine Silverline. You heard me.